We live in this like miraculous economy right now where like there's Old Town Road one week and like Bottoms Up the next week, and like there's just this endless like ocean of like fascinating things that are gonna arise. This is sort of what I'm talking about that I think Billie's mastered, is that like what happens in between singles, what happens when you go out on the road, and how do you form like what feels like a friendship with your fans. And so, you know, no matter what's coming next, they're always ready for it.
What's up, geniuses? I have taken my Invisalign out, and this is for the record. I'm your host, Rob Markman. Now, last week on Friday, 17-year-old sensation, friend of the show, Billie Eilish, dropped her debut album, y'all. It's called When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? And it's already projected to be the #1 album in the country. We're gonna speak more about that. But we're here to all break it down, like what does it mean? What did we like? What did we didn't like? What does this all mean for Billie? And of course, I have some esteemed friends with me today to talk about this album. First up, we have Naomi Zeichner, artist partnership lead at YouTube Music.
What's up, Rob?
What's up with the fire fit? That's awesome. I feel like that's a very Billie inspired fit.
Yeah, shout out to the future.
That's dope, man. And then next up, we have my guy. I didn't see this guy in mad long, and he's here on the show. I'm so happy we have him. Jason Lipshutz, senior director of music at Billboard,
That's
right?
me. I do not have a good fit at all.
Nah, your fit is very
kind of rumpled, so that's okay.
Lil Nas X. I feel like we're in the moment. Like,
okay,
you know what I'm saying?
cool.
Like, I feel, you know what I'm saying with the
fine
shirt?
with me.
Yeah, man. Come on, man.
Thanks for having
in the
me.
back. What's going on, man? How you doing? Billie Eilish, man. Let's just get into it. Jason, I'll start with you. The album is here. There was a lot of noise about Billie and what she might do, and she dropped the album on Friday.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that a lot of people were taken off guard by how much noise this album was going to make, simply because, you know, Billie Eilish doesn't have a big hit single yet, and she's relatively new on the scene. But we've seen over the past few months, and I'm sure, Naomi, you've seen this as well, everybody's seen this, that she has just taken over these streaming services where people are just latching onto her singles immediately in a way that few pop artists are really seeing these days. So I think that based on just that initial reaction on streaming, the fact that her venues keep growing and growing, we saw that this was going to be a really big deal when this album came out finally. And now it's projected for a pretty big debut at #1 next week.
Awesome. Naomi, we were speaking about this before the show. Like, you know, for years, like we grew up, there was traditional avenues of how you get a record, especially a pop record, to go #1, to really be impactful. Radio was very important. But this feels different, right? Like this feels like, you know, in terms of pop, like it's really breaking through a wall, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's also different than what we used to see. Like we talked a little bit about Tyler, the Creator, right? And Billie Eilish being very much so like a post-Tyler, the Creator act, right? But when Odd Future came out, they were sort of like doing it on the blogs. It was sort of like either you make it on the radio or you make it on the internet. And I think with Billie, it's like not such a simple dichotomy. You know, she's very much being pushed through like traditional avenues, whether that's magazine covers or on the radio as well, but it's also like everything that she's doing in between releases, and also all that she's done on touring to like really build up that fan base. But you know, she's sort of got this always on presence in the last couple of years that I think like really she's put the work in and it works, right? Like, and that's why she can drop anything, whether it's like a sweatshirt or a new song, and there's sort of that built-in excitement and that built-in loyalty, which I think is really impressive.
Right, and a lot of it has to do also, I mean, the music connects. I mean, this is a 17-year-old young woman, and man, but her music, like, I listened to Billie, I told her this when she was on the show, it feels like my mother would say, it feels like you've been here before. Like, she has kind of like an old soul, it doesn't seem like your average 17-year-old. Talk about the music. Let's talk about the music on the album.
Yeah,
how did that strike you?
I mean, it's this kind of this dark pop. Obviously, is kind of the catch-all for it. But I think what's really interesting about the album is that it goes in a lot of different directions. There are ballads on it. There are kind of bass-heavy, like trap-inspired songs. There are more traditional like pop song structures. There's kind of interludes where she's playing around with the ukulele. There's a song with vocal samples from an Office episode. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of what really struck me about the album is that she's taking time to explore all of these different sounds and styles. Because look, she's 17 years old. Like and this is her first album. Like she has every right and a ton of talent to play around with a bunch of different styles. I think some of them work and some of them don't on the album, but it's such an interesting listen to me because you almost hear her dabbling in different sounds in real time, and it's a fascinating experience to me.
Right. First of all, from the album cover, when she dropped the album cover, I was like, she had me at hello, only because one of my favorite movies of all time, definitely my favorite horror movie of all time, is The Exorcist. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that album cover, I just caught like Exorcist vibes. It literally like sent chills through it. So, when you talk about it kind of having these dark tones as well, like it resonates, I mean, straight from the cover. Naomi, what were some of the tracks that stood out for you? Was there anything that really struck you?
I think Bury a Friend, which was like one of the lead singles, is definitely like one of the catchier songs. And I'm actually quite fond of Wish You Were Gay as well. Yeah. And I think that's maybe one of the like less dark songs, even though it's actually like quite vulnerable and sad and sort of really about like just like wanting to find any reason why somebody doesn't like you, which I think is, very teenage but also universal feeling.
Yeah, that was the one song to me, and when I say that she's beyond her years, I Wish You Were Gay was like the one song to me that very much felt like teenage love.
Kid made
like
this,
yeah, rejection and how do I deal with it? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's a dope song. All Good Girls Go to Hell because even God herself has enemies. Yeah, was such an amazing lyric to me. Like I'm listening to it, so it's things like this that stick out to me. Jason, what stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great example, and it's fun when you say that she's 17, and you can see that in some parts. One of the first songs on the album is the song "Bad Guy," and you have this part where she's like, "I'm the bad guy," and then it just kind of like she almost winks at the camera. She's like, "Duh," right. And it's she's 17. Like this is she's playing around with different styles and. I love Bury a Friend too. It's one of my singles of the year so far in this very young 2019.
Never too early for a list.
But that is, I mean, the fact that she's, and this kind of extends beyond her music, but the fact that she's created all of this music basically solely with her older brother, Phineas. Who's heavily involved in the writing and the recording. But she's so hands-on with everything, and I think that people really appreciate that authenticity on social media in terms of style, in terms of her music videos and her performances. She's so hands-on, and I think that going back to someone like Tyler, the Creator, like there's no filter, and I think fans really appreciate that. Like you get the authentic Billie Eilish in everything she does,
or maybe have even come to expect it from anybody who's like going to be that famous, which is it's interesting. Yeah, I think I like Bad Guy quite a bit as well, and that "Duh" is like I love. It's like a little bit of sort of this like femme edge, like. But also like that makes her that much more powerful. Like I think that song is really effective at kind of like painting the picture of the character she's become. She's like, I don't, I'm sort of just as like nonchalant and like don't give a fuck like all these other dudes around me. But also like I'm aware of my own vulnerability and why I want to be tough, and that makes me like smarter and tougher than you. And I think like I don't know, it seems true enough in the way things are playing out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the song like Listen Before I Go probably gets, because what we were just talking about is her, again, being a 17-year-old young woman, like, having that dumb moment, like, what I'm saying, and these moments of rebellion and redefining, because she's really in the driver's seat to lead a whole generation of young girls and young men on how you should treat and expect and interact with young women, right? But then you have songs like Listen Before I Go, which is like, it gets a little dark, and the suicidal themes of it too, which I think she could be playful, and at the same time, this is also things that kids go through, and then especially we're seeing it maybe more at alarming rates with kids addressing their mental health, pretty early. What do you make of a song like that, Listen Before I Go?
I mean, I do think that like what you were saying about that she sort of feels like she's always been here. Like I don't think sonically the album sounds like something like crazy, like I've never heard before. Not, I mean, it sounds negative and I don't mean it that way, but like, it doesn't sound like I'm like, holy shit, like my old person ears can't wrap my head around this. This comes from a different planet. Yeah, like it doesn't feel new or like of a different generation in that way. But I think what does really feel like of a new generation is like sort of the sort of like deep loneliness and alienation that she's expressing, even as someone who like had this amazing home life, like was homeschooled, really, really like integrated into an amazing family unit, somebody who's like obviously been successful and fulfilled and like done what she wants to do. Like if that alienation is real for her and that sort of like always like sense of like watching yourself as you've been watched and like kind of like knowing yourself through other people's eyes and always thinking about people's perspectives, I think that is really unique to this generation, and that like it's a superpower of theirs. It's also like a super vulnerability, and it's heavy. It's heavy to listen to.
Yeah, and going back to that, thinking of a song like Zani, which is another standout on the album. Again, just a really honest and honest to her her age and her generation type of song, where she's talking about everybody around her taking Xannies and her not being able to kind of process that and feel that type of high or want to feel that type of high. I think it's authentic. Like I said, I think people really relate to the fact that she is not gone through kind of like the manufactured pop machine a little bit, because this type of song would never appear on a lot of mainstream pop albums. This is going to be on the #1 album in the country next week. So yeah, I think people really like that honesty.
Yeah, just talking about Zanny again, like the songwriting, right? I mean, there's secondhand smoke, still drinking canned Coke. Like just the play on words is dope. And I don't need a Zanny to feel better on my designated drives home. Like, and this is a generation, I think, with the prescription pills, which, we've seen crisis like we've never seen. And for her to kind of stand up and say, hey, I don't need this. I'm the same like you. If you look at the way she dresses, her sense of style, like it's totally youthful. But, she also stands up for something which is dope.
And to go back to Naomi's point, which is that to our old person ears, like we can still process this. She really juxtaposes a song like Zanny with a structure. Like I wrote about that song, about how the bridge of that song almost sounds like it's like piano bar fodder. Like it's actually a very straightforward song structure. So it's interesting that she's marrying that type of lyricism with like a pretty traditional pop structure.
Does this change? Does it start to change the way, because we know how labels do, right? And, if she hits the position on the Billboard charts and has the impact that we're all expecting and predicting, labels start to say, hey, I need one of those. Where's my Billie Eilish?
I think, yeah.
Does things start to change? Does this become a catalyst for change in the pop world?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of Billie Eilish copycats in the next couple of years. And I think that will take so many different forms, right? Like, hey, like put her in a huge shirt. Or like, hey, like maybe we can try to write something that's really pressing about drug epidemic, but it can come from a white girl or whatever. I think we'll see it in many different ways. And in some ways we were like already seeing, I think, to the credit of the pop machine or to label A&Rs or everybody or to fans really most of all, I think we're seeing a much broader spectrum of femininity in our pop stars, right? And I think you can speak to this well, but
definitely.
I don't know if we've seen, one as self-possessed and fully realized as Billie at this age as well. I think everybody's so impressed with her.
I like the copycat reference too, by the way.
Oh.
Yeah. I just really like the idea of like, you have this pop artist and just like they're thinking of Billie Eilish, it's like she needs a bigger shirt. She needs a huger sweater. But
Jesus Christ, I hope that doesn't become the thing.
No, it's already the thing. I mean, and also Rihanna was, there's only one. And I think I remember I was at South by Southwest, not even this year, but last year. And I was like, every single girl on these stages is wearing something incredibly comfortable and frankly covetable, something that I would like to be wearing as a woman, would like to buy. So yeah, it's not brand new, but shout out to all the girls who look
right
great.
now you're wearing something that I would like to buy. I really want to know where you got that suit from. Like, you're gonna see me on the next episode popped up with Naomi's fits, man.
But what's interesting to me is that if you think about where pop was a decade ago with people like Katy Perry at the forefront, And now, I mean, look, I have a soft spot in my heart for parts of that era. But I think what we're seeing now is almost like a democratization of pop music, where you have someone like Billie Eilish really make an impact on streaming, and you see, because of that impact, because of listener appreciation and interest, and those streams pile up and pile up and pile up across platforms, you get people paying attention in ways that you might not necessarily have before. Like, again, it's almost like an underground artist, which Billie was even as close as a year and a half ago, can now bubble up to the forefront and get, magazine covers and big looks and these kind of partnerships with different services because people are paying attention to those streams and people are paying attention to what people actually want to listen to.
Right. No, and that's dope, because as though she's getting these mainstream looks, I never feel like as a fan that she's changed very much. She still feels underground, or she still feels like she doesn't feel tainted by the machine. And I did the wolf at Katy Perry, not because of what Katy Perry was. I just remember Witness and every mistake that they made during that rollout, because it seemed, again, you get to this point, and it's all music, but pop in particular gets this criticism. Like, it seems so calculated. It seems like everything is a calculated move, and it felt like Katy Perry, who was, arguably one of the biggest definitely one of the biggest pop stars in the world, if not the biggest at the times when she would release, that everything was so calculated on Witness, and it felt like everything was a fail. And they streamed and they did well, but it just didn't feel like it has the impact.
You can. I think that's really the lesson we've learned over the past few years. And I speak about we as like just outsiders, is that you can try to build up everything and you can try to game plan for everything, but the thing you can't game plan for is what listeners are actually going to react to.
Yeah.
And again, why would Billie at this point change at all? Like, she's made herself into a star by being herself, by being authentic, and people have really reacted to that. She wants to use samples from an Office episode in her song. Like, yeah, she would go for it. Like, that's what she wants to do. Like, and people are reacting to her, which is great.
I had to look that up because I'm the only person on earth who's never
I'm actually not a big Office fan either, so I did not know.
I've never seen it.
Okay.
Oh wow!
I don't know.
This panel.
Ancient. But no, we live in this like miraculous economy right now where like there's like, Old Town Road one week and like Bottoms Up the next week, and like there's just this endless like ocean of like fascinating things that are gonna arise without, from God knows where. And I think so it's very hard to manufacture that, and hard to manufacture that kind of like curiosity and excitement that people are gonna get, whatever, that everything's going to feel authentically exciting and not super canned. But I think, you have to, like, there's only one Bottoms Up, right? And that it's like, can you sustain it? Can you sustain the amazing, momentum of a song like Tatiana after it grows for a year or whatever? And I think, like, this is sort of what I'm talking about, that I think Billie's mastered, is that, like, what happens in between singles, what happens when you go out on the road, and how do you form, like, what feels like a friendship with your fans. And so, no matter what's coming next, they're always ready for it.
Right. And, it feels dope, though, too, like, this album to me was rewarding in the way that if you were a Billie fan, even though this is going to be her biggest moment by far, there were nods to if you came up with her musically. Like, the album is so self-referential in that way. And I don't know if that was deliberate, but it's comforting because a lot of fans, especially young fans, react like, I think as fans, we love when we discover something and it's just ours and it's just our group of friends. And then when it belongs to the world, again, it's this expectation, like, oh my God, like, here it goes, everything is gonna change. And I wonder if Billie did this purposely, and maybe she didn't, it was probably like super organically, but so self-referential, like, You Should See Me in the Crown has like a small nod to Ocean's Eyes, just, a reference. Or, even Goodbye, the last song on the album, uses lyrics from each, song on the album and stuff like that. Like, there was just nods that if you're an old-time Billie fan, that she was like, don't worry, I know we're going here, but I still got you guys, which I think was super comforting.
Yeah, no, I think, and she's not the first artist to do that, but I think that fans, like longtime fans, love those kind of Easter eggs where it's just like, oh yeah, you see us, like, we've been around for a while, and like you said, can kind of nod to that.
To me, man, the first time I really kind of noticed that style of songwriting was with TDE. I think Kendrick does that a ton with the just being self-referential to Ab-Soul's catalog and even Schoolboy Q's catalog. Like he'll take, instead of taking a big line and repurposing it, he'll take a old J-Rock line and repurpose it, or old Ab-Soul line and repurpose it. So yeah, it's really dope for the fans. One thing we talked about too before we got on set was Lord. Billie is drawing a lot of comparisons to Lord, and if we look just a few years back, Lord definitely was that figure that was kind of anti-pop when everything was all pop and shiny. Lord wasn't. Are those comparisons warranted? Like how are those comparisons true, and how are they false in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair comparison. It's kind of a young woman who's come seemingly out of nowhere and has a different kind of darker take on traditional pop music. I think that there are different touchstones for each one. I think that Lord's music is a little bit shinier in the sense of like the packaging and the production, especially this new album where her last album where she worked with Jack Antonoff. This is a little bit more, I want to say like DIY Billie Eilish is, but I think that there are certainly there are things that are reminiscent in Billie's music of Lord, but I think that I think they're pretty different voices and different approaches.
Do we know if she's still in the bedroom with Phineas? Did they record this album I know a lot of songs started as demos.
Yeah.
And she had talked about, but it'd be interesting to see, and maybe she spoke about it. If she did, my bad that I missed it. Because her and Phineas started in the bedroom, like you had said earlier. Are they still recording this album in the bedroom? Because I think that has
I think it's probably in the studio at this point.
Yeah, I think, right, like we know a friend was made in the studio, but I think that's still like, to my knowledge, like that's still where she's living. I think that's really the big question, right? She's 17 when she's 18, like will she still live in this sort of like amazing little like house with her whole entire family, or sort of what will her life look like as she moves out on her own and as somebody who's sort of been tied so much. But I think like Royals and Ocean Eyes, right, were both these like big breakout on SoundCloud singles, and then Royals moved very quickly to radio, and like people were playing it on rap radio, right? Yeah. And that was like a whole big thing. And she was like wearing the crown, and she was like, I love Kanye West, and it was sort of like, holy shit, here's this like white teenager who's sort of like invoking hip hop culture on this song that like, has some hip hop production elements, but is very much a pop song. Like, is that okay? And I think like Lord's reaction to that as she grew up and sort of matured as a songwriter was she was like, I want to, it seems like that she was sort of like explicitly like, let me step away from any sense that I'm borrowing from hip hop culture, like, and kind of like do my own thing, right? And I think you're right that it's like more, her last album was more optimistic and like big and awesome. And I think like Billie, on the other hand, has very much like been like, no, I love hip hop culture. I wouldn't be who I was without hip hop culture, and has sort of like really taken efforts to like show her knowledge and indebtedness to it, and like, show respect. But it's funny, right? Like I was asking my cousin who's in high school about Billie Eilish, because kids are supposed to love Billie Eilish so much, and like, somebody, and I was sort of like, well, what do you think about this? And she was like, I don't know, like it just feels like there's elements of her that aren't authentic. And I was sort of like, well, what about that? And I think what she was saying, right, is that for her, like that this sort of like closeness to hip hop culture in some way felt inauthentic, and like so I don't agree with my cousin on that, right. But I also thought it was really interesting that she was sort of calling that out, and that tension, there's still sort of like an expectation that that's somehow unfair or something, to sort of be a part of. So I think what's interesting is that like 5 years later or whatever, that positioning is different for an artist, or that that she still feels, or also maybe that hip hop culture is just much more increasingly complicated day by day, right? And more welcoming than any other genre, as we see, like.
But it also felt like, I'm not gonna lie, Lord and Royals kind of, when you use that drum pad, like it felt like they were going for a very deliberate thing. It was easy. You remember Rick Ross dropped the verse on it.
Right.
It kind of lent itself to like drop a verse on this. Hot 97 will play it. Power 106 will play it. Like it fits right in with the mix. And though I feel like Billie is of the hip hop generation, like her music doesn't necessarily speak to hip hop in that very clear and apparent way. It's funny to me, Billie seems authentic in the way that Lord didn't, or in the way like the thing that's really pissing me off right now is Miley Cyrus. Like it was just like, you know, I think part of the frustration when it comes to appropriation is seeing artists, white artists, and especially in the pop space, be able to put hip hop on when convenient and then take it
right back
off
off.
when convenient for them to do so. And it's gonna be interesting to see what Miley's next album sounds like, because everything on social media now is hip hop leaning. After she made the comment that, you know, her last album was like, oh yeah, hip hop is too much whatever materialism and sexuality, and it was like, yo, dog, but you was just twerking. What are you doing? Like, oh man, I'd like to forget it. So I think it's different, and I think Miley is probably like a really extreme example of when you're going to draw the era of the culture and really come under fire in the way that Lord isn't, and the way that Billie doesn't even feel close to that. It just feels like a young girl who didn't grow up on hip hop. You know what I'm saying? In this generation.
Yeah, and part of it is, and I think you guys both make great points. I think part of it is also just how seamlessly hip hop percussion and trap beats have morphed into part of pop music. Like, you listen to some of the biggest Ariana Grande songs right now, and obviously
of course,
a lot of that percussion is hip hop indebted. And like you said about Billie, like, she's very quick to reference how much hip hop means to her and her sound. So yeah, it's almost about again, it's like finding that kind of balance of like, okay, you kind of cross the line in terms of appropriation or versus what's okay. So
I think it's way bigger than Sonics, right? And I think that she's showing gratitude to that as well, right? It's the audience that Tyler the Creator created, and that's like includes punk rock and includes R&B and includes Billie Eilish and includes Brockhampton and like includes selling a lot of merch, and it's sort of an entire vision and an entire audience that I think like hip hop led, and that's way more welcoming than a lot of the genres that we understand, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's a very kind of dope moment for music. It's always, I think, exciting to see these moments. I think we watched her grow from underground and for Billie to have a really pop worldwide, all eyes on you moment feels deserving. So I'd like to thank you both for coming For the Record to talk about it, you know, with me, and kind of break this down and dissect it a little bit. And, you know, I thank you guys for watching. Listen, if you haven't listened to When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Definitely check it out. We want to know what you think. You know, I'm in the YouTube comments all the time interacting with y'all, so y'all can leave the YouTube comments, man. I'm going to answer right back, man. And you'll check us out next week on For the Record. Peace.